all working. Let's see if it seems like everything is working just fine.
Seems like
Yes.
everything is working just fine.
Amazing. Good morning, friends. Thanks for dropping by. Let's see. You can't move forward without walking back. That sounds silly because I screwed it up. You're going to have to edit this out. But let's try that again. You can't move forward without looking back and learning from your mistakes and experiences. Now, that's what we're going to do this morning because it is Sunday morning. And on Sunday morning, we take a step back and we take a look at everything that's happened this week. And we're going to take those lessons, learn from them, and do different and better next week, if at all possible, and the week after, and the week after. Now let's aim for 1% a day, and that's a lot of improvement over the course of a year. Okay, just a little bit better. Hey, listen, for those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I'm 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep. I try to get between 7 and 9 hours a night. I do so by minding what I eat. I try to eat within my energy balance, which is around 2200 calories. As of today, I'm going to be tracking that again for a couple of weeks. I am eating lots of greens, lots of vegetables. I'm eating less and less meat, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. Fish, maybe once or twice a week, depends. Usually I try to prefer fish and then skip the meat most days. And I try to eat a lot of variety, a lot of wholesome, healthy foods, lots of fibers, lots of colors, to get all those different nutrients in and to keep the system working as well as it can. I'm also trying to hit my protein goals. So on a regular day, that's between 60 and 80 grams. For me, on a training day, that's between 80 and 100 grams for me, and that is about where I'm at in terms of my nutrition. And I try to show up and do some work every day. This morning after this podcast recording, I'm going to go for a jog. I'm going to see if my foot's going to allow me to do that, both during the jog and after. So let's see if it is able to bear the load of me running. But generally I try to show up every morning for 30 minutes and do some work. So I do kettlebell training Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do mobility Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday is usually reserved for some cardio. But I'm making some slight variations into that programming, as well as I also try to be active throughout the day. But I'm looking more for things like sport and play, for walking upstairs, for taking casual strolls, but not for any additional training, because I think the function of training in the mix of training and movement and sport and play is very, very different to what movement, general movement and active life is. We can talk a lot more about that. If you have any questions, you go ahead and ask me. But that's generally how I design my week, to work on my health, fitness, and my longevity, because that's what this podcast is all about. So those are things that you're interested in. You can go ahead, hit like, so that I know that this is a video or podcast that is of interest to you. You can hit subscribe, because there is probably there are probably some notifications that you might get if you start following this channel, since my videos don't naturally pop up in YouTube's most watched feed for some reason. But I think it's pretty clear, there's a small channel that the games and the rules of YouTube are changing. So you'd help me out a lot by subscribing and by maybe giving me a couple of minutes of your time in exchange for the content that I talk about. Because if you'd go over to my channel and watch a video or listen to the entire podcast series, we can have the conversation about different topics. I talk about sleep, I talk about food, I talk about moving, I talk about friendship and connection, I talk about mastery and hobbies, all from the point of view of what is going to take for us to lead healthy, active, adventurous, independent lives, not only now, but as we age into the future. I mean, we spend the first 15, 20 years of our life claiming our independence. I think we'd want to hold on to our independence to the day that we move on from this world, so to speak. I think the space in between is where we have the opportunity to do a lot of fun and interesting things. And the reason I find this so important is that if you look at us and life in general, we are going to live longer. We are probably going to live longer than we give ourselves credit for or expect. We are probably going to live well into our 70s and 80s, and maybe even into our 90s. It's completely possible actually to reach 90, 95 and be a well-functioning human being. Sure, you'll have some ailments. The onset of age and experience, there is natural wear and tear in life, but there's no reason for us to not be healthy as we go into our 5th, 6th, and 7th, and maybe even our 8th decade. There's no reason for us to not be spry, to not be active, to not be strong, to not be fit, for us to be on a lot of medications, for us to be limited in the options that we have or the things we want to do because of the lifestyle choices we made the 3 decades before. Because it all adds up, right? There are certain discomforts and diseases, certain losses of capability and capacity that we can very much attribute to the lifestyle choices we make today. By lifestyle, I mean sleep, food, movement, community friendships, connections, and hobbies, mastery, right? So that's what I want us to think about when we are having this conversation in this podcast is, where do we want to be when we're 70 and 80? Are we living it up today and do we not care what comes at the end of life? Which is fine, by the way. Because I think everyone has to make their own choices in terms of what they find important and which priorities they give themselves today, but also tomorrow. Because health and fitness is incredibly personal. But if you're of a conviction that you want to get old, healthy, happy, active, disease and discomfort free, then the things we talk about here are probably something for you. So go ahead to my channel, hit like, subscribe on the stream. Let me know you're watching in chat, say hi, and we can continue this conversation. Okay? Today's training is the next topic. Today's training, I am going for a 30-minute jog. Nothing special, nothing intense, nothing terribly demanding usually, but it is going to be a bit of a test for my foot, for my back, although my back seems to be completely healed. I injured my back, I think 3 months ago by making a wrong move by lifting a kettlebell. I wasn't paying attention, and that set me back quite a bit, but it also put me on a path to better cardiovascular health. It's a trade-off. But that seems to be going well, but then my foot has started to act up and it seems to be doing better. But it's also, you can feel that something has changed or still needs to rebalance itself in the foot. On the other hand, It's allowing me to do a lot of things again. I'm curious if it allows me to run. If I can't run, I simply walk. It's also that simple. That's not a big problem. And that is just a very slow run. It's like a zone 3-ish probably. Nothing crazy. Not zone 2, zone 1 and 2 I get in with walks a lot already. So I'm not too concerned about that broad base. I'm more concerned with this kind of training of hitting the in-betweens. So it's like hitting the zone 3 and 4, and with high intensity interval training also hitting, zone 5, hitting that max heart rate on, for example, sprints, if I was able to do that. So I need to figure out something to do that kind of training as well in the coming weeks. And that's where it's at. In terms of training, it's going quite well again. I think the 12 kilo kettlebell has come out a couple of times, and that has worked. I have discovered some new things in terms of training, things that I would also like to incorporate, and the work on the shoulder mobility continues, and it continues in a good way. I think we're making good progress there. But day by day, right, the most important thing is that we're consistently showing up and doing something, and that matters. That matters a lot. However, we're also going to talk today about what happened in the last week, and I've talked about motivation. I've said that I've been struggling. I said so last week. This week was not different. I think it's completely normal to have a spell of a couple of weeks there. The mental will to keep doing things is not there, but it's more about the habits and routines and what we can and can't do and what we're prioritizing in that time that we're going to reflect on and talk about. So a couple of things that are happening, and I think this also calls back to the conversation we sometimes have about the impact the environment or circumstances have on our ability to train and what we're actually able to do, right? Where I always say, well, the food that's in the fridge has an impact on what you eat. The options that are available to you in the vicinity of your house, or when you're at work or when you're on the road, will impact what you are able to control and consume. How you're going to be training, if you're going to be able to train. The demands, commitments, responsibilities that we have in life factor in there. Right now it's super hot, okay? And that means that the window for training, first of all, it's nicer to train when it's cool outside. So that's, I think that's one to keep in mind. It's also probably wiser to train when it's cool outside because we don't want to overheat and damage ourselves, or worse. But the heat in the night also leads to restlessness. It's children who find it hard to sleep despite having an airco cooling the room throughout the day. It gets very stuffy in the room at night. If the thing's turned on at night, it's very noisy. The kids pick up on it. They get different bugs. They are a bit more irritable and agitated during the day because of the hotness and the weather. And it's been like that the whole week. There has been, I think, 3 occasions over the last, 10 days already, or 4, where I've woken up at 12 or at 2 and haven't been able to go back to sleep for a couple of hours because it's hot, it's uncomfortable. Someone needs attention, needs to be calmed down, needs to be soothed to go back to sleep. Last night, my youngest wanted to have a midnight snack, and he'd already said he was hungry after dinner, but we'd had dinner, so go to sleep. He fell asleep. He woke up in the middle of the night. He said, "I'm hungry." If he's still hungry 6 hours later, he gets food. It's that simple. But you have to sit, go down, make a sandwich, everything, right? It takes time. And you're active, and when you're active, you're awake, even if you keep everything dark. So that also doesn't help my desire to work out, because I know the impact it's having on my recovery. But also, if I sleep 3 hours, what's the point of, trying to do exercises? First of all, I run the risk of injuring myself. Second of all, I'm just going to be too tired maybe to even do anything or to recover properly from what I'm doing. And it's trying to find a balancing act. So what are my priorities? My priorities are sleep, food, training. All right, hang on. So if I'm not sleeping well, is it then okay for me to reevaluate what kind of training we're going to do? Absolutely, right? We are not dogmatic or rigid. We are doing things that functionally make a difference in our life. However, we also have routines and habits, and it's striking a balance. If I go to bed at 9 and I wake up at 4, that's not a full night of sleep, maybe, but that's probably sufficient to be able to get up and do some workout and be completely fine for the rest of the day. If I go to bed at 9, I wake up at 12, and then I go back to sleep at 3:30, and then I have to wake up at 5, it's a different story, right? And we need to learn to balance that for ourselves. Like these 2 weeks over the course of the 500 weeks of training that I have ahead of me in the next decade, right? 520 if we're nitpicking. Those are not going to make the difference if I've skipped 3 or 4 days this week, but I'm consistent most of the weeks for those 520 weeks ahead. But having that realization, maybe I feel some pressure in the moment that if I don't show up today, I'm not going to show up, or it's not going to work, or it's all going to be for nothing. No, that's not how this works, okay? So when it gets hot, when it gets uncomfortable, when it gets stuffy, when it gets summerish, right? Just keep in mind that there will be an impact on your ability to do the things. The routine changes, the days get longer, people have more energy, you don't want to be super active. There are other things that you want to do throughout your day, and that's fine. On the other hand, if the agreement with ourselves is we're going to try and show up for 30 minutes every day and work on our fitness, whether it's weightlifting or conditioning or mobility or running or whatever that's going to be, it's important to try to find time to fit that in. But if you go from 7 days a week to 4 days a week for the 2 months that it is hot, you get a lot done in 4 days a week in terms of training. If you also have an active lifestyle and you're eating well and you're sleeping well, is there really going to be a problem with our health and fitness in the long run? I doubt it. I honestly doubt it. But it also comes back to your goals, right? And so when we reflect on a day like today on what happened throughout the week, it's also important to really understand whether our goals are realistic, whether our goals are useful for our day-to-day lives, or whether our goals are actually a source of pressure, a source of discomfort, maybe a source of dismotivation even, because they are too high or too ambitious or too demanding given everything else that goes on in life. The reason I talk about small changes throughout the week is because I think that it is way easier to fit in a glass of water before breakfast, or a glass of water before lunch, or an apple before lunch, or an apple before dinner, than it is to try and cut 300 calories from our daily diet. But according to the research, that glass of water or that apple might diminish the amount you eat by about 50 to 100 calories on that meal. So you've already won the calorie game there without having to do anything drastic, right? These are all options we have. Doesn't mean we don't need to revisit our nutritional plan, our dietary habits, the types of foods we eat, but we don't have to feel tremendous pressure to overhaul all of that in one go. It's the same with exercise and movement, training. Training is very function specific. I'm not bench pressing to lose weight. I'm bench pressing to build strength in my chest muscles and my triceps, to build bigger muscles, to build more lean mass, and maybe trade off some soft tissue for lean mass. But the main stimulus there is strength and maybe muscle volume, right? I don't go running to lose weight or to burn calories. I go running because it is a stimulus for my cardiovascular system, right? For my respiratory system. It improves the function of my body. That's the payoff and the benefit of that run, not the fact that I burn 300, 400, 500 calories in doing so, even though that's sometimes what we think it is. The benefits of an active life is that it challenges the cardiovascular system throughout the day. We get sufficient movement and we use our muscles, we use our breathing, our lungs, we use our heart, we use our veins. They function better because they receive sufficient stimulus throughout the day rather than when we are just sitting. It's the absence of movement that becomes a problem. So all of that training is very function specific. It's very adaptation specific, so to speak. You don't need to do that 7 days a week. You can. It might make you feel good, might make you happy, right? Might be a part of your routine and the image you have of yourself. But that is not the end game. The end game is to develop a 24-hour cycle of routines and habits that in the short and long run are satisfying, keep us motivated, keep us happy, keep us engaged, and move the needle on our health and fitness and increase our longevity. That's what we're aiming for here. So there are a lot of different considerations that go into this, right? And it's complex, not complicated. No, don't feel pressure. Look at the longer term, the bigger picture, and do small things, not big things. Evolution, not revolution. Okay, and over time, as we find out what works, and as we make small changes, and as our lifestyle changes, we'll see that the payoff is there for us, and we don't have to be too concerned about it. That's all I have for you today. 6:34 a.m. I am going to go for a little run before it gets way too hot outside, and if the run turns into a walk, I'll tell you all about it during the next recording. Thanks for dropping by, friends. Thanks for saying hi, for being well along with me on this ride. I hope you're well where you are in the world. I hope you stay well. I hope things are going well for you today, whether you're on your way to bed or waking up and starting your day just like I am. Remember that we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. So a bit of kindness is going to go a long way, all right? There are enough people out there who want to put us down, so we'll lift ourselves up. And the only way to get anything done, friends, is by showing up and doing the work. So I'll see you tomorrow, all right? Take care. And remember, friends, subscribe.